After spending 2 months with the iPhone 15 Pro Max and running all the tests, I feel really conflicted. On one hand, it felt pretty similar to the last 2 generations of iPhones. However, after living with it, I found some pretty insane features that made this probably the biggest upgrade I've had. But those same features might not be meaningful to you, and others are also available on the cheaper iPhone 15. One thing's for sure though, Apple is beginning to let the user have more and more choices, like the action button. Now, instead of only toggling on silent mode, this button can be mapped to a whole array of things. And I think this is a great change because I rarely change my phone to ring, but it was useful as an indicator, and you still do get that on the new phone as an on-screen icon. There are quite a few default options, and the most notable one is setting it to trigger a shortcut, which can essentially make it do anything that you want. I use it to launch the Blackmagic camera app, which is so much better than the default one for video, and you can even set it to launch a specific camera. Another choice is whether you want to use the always on display and standby mode, and if you do, you have a vast amount of choices on customizing them too, since they both support third-party widgets. In this regard, they're even more customizable than on Samsung phones, which is very rare for Apple. At this rate, soon, maybe I'll even be able to place an app anywhere I want on the home screen. And having widgets on the lock screen and standby mode has really grown on me. They can be pretty cute, like displaying a pixel pet or a photo of my real dog, but I also find they're great for letting me go into the phone less, because I can see things like my calendar and weather information here. Also, now that widgets can be interactive, I can even check off my to-do list right from here. The dynamic island and live activities are very helpful in the same way. They make it much easier to monitor things. One of my favorite use cases is Toggle Track, which keeps track of how long I spend on things. And when I exit the app, the time still counts up in the dynamic island. But another really great integration of the live activities is in the standby mode, where it can show on the entire phone screen. However, the dynamic island and widgets are also on the regular iPhone 15 now, so these features don't really justify the Pro iPhone. But the build does feel more premium. The new titanium rim makes it lighter than last gen, and however thin, seems to hold up pretty well. It's also pretty scratch resistant. Over the last 2 months, I didn't even have a case on it most of the time, and I brought it with me everywhere. So far, it still looks brand new. The edges are also more rounded, which does feel better. Also, the bezels are slightly thinner, and I love it. Other than that though, the display is still very smooth and can go extremely bright, but it's nothing new at this point. And the same could be said about the cameras, if not for the software upgrades. There are more choices on capturing formats than ever, and these honestly made it the biggest generational improvement I've seen on an iPhone for photo and especially for video. The main camera most likely has the same sensor and the same lens as last year, but with a slightly different coating, which does reduce glare, but in my testing, it was very marginal. And now in addition to the standard 12 megapixel for photos, they've added a 24 megapixel option and actually set it as a default, which I definitely think is a way to go because just look at these two photos side by side. The 24 megapixel image looks so much better than the 12 megapixel version from the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Even when not punched in, I find these higher resolution images look more natural because they aren't sharpened as aggressively. And unlike shooting RAW or in 48 megapixel mode, all 24 megapixel images still allow for live photos and now even portrait effects to be added in post. The depth data is supposed to be automatically saved for human subjects, but I found that it actually didn't apply to lots of my photos. So tapping on the subject is still necessary to ensure that the portrait effect will be available in post. You now also have a shortcut to 1.2 and 1.5 times crop, probably because the 48 megapixel sensor still has 24 megapixels, even when you crop in 1.5 times. And you can change the default to one of these crops, but I would still leave it at just 1 times, because even though punching in 1.5 times still gets the 24 megapixel resolution, the quality does take a slight hit. And the 2 times option, which was first introduced last year, is still there, but just know that now the 2 times quality will be noticeably worse since you're only using 1/4 of the sensor, so you're left with only 12 megapixels. There's also a new 5 times telephoto, and the lens looks absolutely massive on the back. And so does the entire camera bump on this phone. So if you're looking for a phone case that gives good protection for the cameras, consider these ones from ESR, today's video sponsor. This is their classic series case, and it has a raised camera guard that can double as a sturdy kickstand to support the phone in many different angles. It can be super nice for some hands-free video watching, and this is actually ESR's original patented design. This case has built-in magnets to ensure an extra secure lock on all MagSafe accessories. It's quite thin, which helps with faster MagSafe charging, but it's still very protective. This one is clear, but ESR also has the Cloud series, which has all the same features, but it's soft silicone, and I love how it feels in the hand. Now, if you're going hiking or something and you want to make make sure your phone is extra protected, ESR also has the Armor series. It has the same features as the other two, but it also comes with a camera lens protector and a full coverage screen guard. This case provides total 360 degrees protection, and you can still easily use the screen underneath. Check out these ESR cases at the link down below, and you can get 20% off with 20 ESR 15 case. You can also search ESR MagSafe on Amazon to find many cool MagSafe accessories. Although the 5x camera is only 12 megapixels, the quality is surprisingly good. A 10x digital crop looks pretty reasonable, even next to the dedicated 10x camera on the S23 Ultra. However, in lower light situations, it does suffer. This is a quality that you can expect at night, which obviously doesn't look great. Another surprising finding is that the 5x camera has a ridiculously long minimum focus distance. That means it literally cannot focus on things less than 3 feet away from the phone. This demo is done using the Blackmagic camera app, which actually always uses the camera you select. But in the default camera app, if you try to punch in 5 times on something close, it will just use the main camera, which results in some pretty low quality photos. And at first, I wasn't sure about replacing the 3x telephoto with 5x, especially since now the 3x is worse than what it was last year. However, after going out and taking lots of photos with this phone, I now actually prefer it. The 5x doesn't just give this phone more reach, but it also gives it a very cool perspective for portraits. The background appears a lot bigger and just looks way more dramatic. The iPhone 15 Pro Max's main lens actually also cannot focus that close. In fact, the regular iPhone 15's main lens can focus closer than it. And this isn't great because there have been several times where I want to take a photo of something small and I'm forced to use a macro mode in order to focus, which is lower quality than the main lens. Overall though, the main camera upgrades and the new telephoto lens are great. However, I do wish that they gave more attention to the ultrawide and selfie lens, because even compared to 2 years ago, they're practically the same. And personally, I use those two lenses quite often. Another thing that makes the photo capability feel less special is the fact that the regular iPhone 15 now also has a 48 megapixel main camera that also takes high quality 24 megapixel photos. On the other hand though, the video capability feels like a complete revolution. Just look at this video next to the iPhone 14 Pro Maxes. This is by far the biggest change I've seen in a 1-year upgrade, and it's mainly because of two things: ProRes and Apple Log. First of all, only evaluating these features using the Apple default camera app doesn't nearly give it the credit it deserves, because the drawbacks such as large file size and needing to use an SSD to film 4K 60 can simply be avoided by using the Blackmagic camera app. Even the Shot on iPhone Apple event was shot using this app, as you can see in the behind the scenes. I think ProRes is phenomenal, and everybody can take advantage of it to get better videos without any additional effort. But the format from the default camera app is ProRes HQ, which is ridiculously large. However, just select ProRes LT in the Blackmagic camera app, and it'll be 3 times smaller while looking basically identical in quality. I think it's worth learning the app just for this, and I've actually started filming most of my personal videos in ProRes LT. Okay, but to get the shockingly large difference I showed you in the beginning, you still need Apple Log. Using this not only bypasses the sharpening, it also bypasses the local tone mapping, which means the phone won't be tweaking the brightness of things randomly to what it thinks looks good. You definitely need to edit the log footage, and it can be as simple as just applying the lookup table from Apple. But typically you would want to color grade it more, and there is a learning curve to it. It certainly is more work, but for me, it's totally worth it because just look at this side by side with my Sony a7 IV. In many situations, the iPhone footage can now look just as good as from a $3,000 camera. And honestly, the iPhone is now probably better at taking videos than many point and shoot cameras, including the Canon G7X and Sony ZV-1, which are two super popular vlog cameras. For me, Log makes the iPhone like an additional professional camera that can blend seamlessly with footage that I capture from my other real cameras. But unless you're willing to individually color grade the shots in post, Log won't really be that useful to you. Okay, so shooting 24 megapixels or even 48 megapixels is the way to go for photos, and ProRes LT is probably the best format for videos. However, those are much larger files than before, which would certainly make storage a concern, if not for the new USB-C port that's 10 times faster than Lightning. Maybe you can even get less storage now because it's so much faster to transfer files to an external storage device. I have this USB-C SSD, and once plugged in, I can transfer files to it directly inside the Photos app. Transferring 2 gigs only took about 5 seconds. Another thing is a new 3nm chip, which I thought was going to be a big deal since iPhone's 12, 13, and 14 Pro SoCs were all made on the 5nm process. So I expected a bigger leap forward than what we have seen for the past 3 years. And it is quite a bit faster and has ray tracing. For the GPU, it scored about 14% better than last gen, and it scored quite a bit better for the CPU as well. So even without considering ray tracing, it's quite a bit faster than last year. This makes it better for heavy games and general longevity. But if the games that you play do leverage ray tracing, then the 15 Pro Max will be much better because it now has dedicated hardware to do that. In the Solar Bay test, which specifically tests ray tracing, it scored significantly better than the 14 Pro Max. But right now, there isn't any ray trace game that I really love playing, and there just aren't that many out there yet. So in my use, the 15 Pro Max's performance didn't feel much different than last gen, especially since the GPU still does thermal throttle quite aggressively. After 2 minutes, it had already dipped 26%. And for other tasks and lighter games, it feels very fast, but so did last gen. I had also hoped that the 3nm chip would bring big efficiency benefits and extend the battery life. And it does, but only slightly. I did a full drain test where I had them play shorts, run a gaming benchmark, and play a live stream. And at the end, even with a marginally larger battery, the iPhone 15 Pro Max only lasted about 9% longer. Considering this is a brand new phone versus a 1-year-old phone and they have the same display, it's just not that impressive. But the battery life isn't really a concern because even the iPhone 14 Pro Max lasted long enough for me. Overall, I think the iPhone 15 Pro Max is significant. It's the first phone that takes truly professional looking videos, but you gotta be a semi-pro to even take advantage of it. Beyond that, the best parts are the high-res main camera, the beautiful display, and some nice software features. But aside from 120Hz, they're actually all shared with the regular iPhone 15. I really enjoy the perspective of the 5x telephoto, but that's more of a personal preference. So it's a solid upgrade overall, but I feel like for most things that you would do often, it just feels a bit too similar to last gen and also the cheaper iPhone 15. That's gonna be it for this review. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, follow me on my other socials, and you can watch more here.